The wind howled through the towering pines, whipping snowflakes into a swirling dance that obscured the world beyond. Nestled in this remote wilderness stood a small cabin, its wooden walls weathered by countless winters. A thick blanket of snow covered the roof, and icicles hung like daggers from the eaves, glimmering under the pale light of a winter sun that struggled to break through heavy clouds. The landscape was a harsh expanse of white, unbroken save for the occasional tracks of wildlife seeking shelter. Here, in this secluded corner of nature, silence reigned supreme, punctuated only by the crunch of snow beneath the man's boots as he ventured outside each day. His daily routine revolved around survival, chopping wood for the fire, melting snow for water, and ensuring his modest supplies lasted until spring. As night fell, darkness enveloped the forest like a heavy shroud. The cabin became a beacon of warmth against the bitter cold. Its flickering light promised safety amidst the perilous elements outside. Yet, that very night, an unusual sound pierced through the stillness, a faint rustling that echoed against the backdrop of howling winds and shifting snow. Curiosity piqued, he pulled on his coat and opened the door cautiously. The icy air rushed in, biting at his skin as he squinted into the blizzard. The sight that met him left him breathless, a figure dragging itself toward him with slow, agonizing movements. In that moment, he knew this winter night would change everything. Compassion and instinct surged within him as he stepped forward into the unknown. The man, known simply as Jack, had chosen this rugged life long ago, drawn by the call of the wild and a desire for solitude. He found peace in the rhythm of nature, where every day was dictated by the sun's rise and fall. His weathered hands were skilled from years of chopping wood, mending fences, and tending to his small garden during the brief summer months. Each task was a necessary part of his existence, a reminder that life thrived even in the most unforgiving conditions. As dawn broke, Jack would emerge from his cabin, steaming cup of coffee in hand, to take in the pristine beauty surrounding him. The air was crisp and invigorating, infused with the scent of pine and earth. Every morning, the stillness would envelop him like a comforting blanket, interrupted only by the distant calls of wildlife or the rustle of branches swaying in the wind. He felt a deep connection to this land, every inch of it a testament to resilience and survival. In his solitude, he found solace. However, there were moments when loneliness crept in. He often reminisced about the laughter of friends and family he had left behind, yet he never regretted his choice. Nature offered companionship in its own way, the gentle sway of trees, the dance of shadows across the snow, and the occasional sighting of deer grazing nearby. Yet tonight was different. The usual tranquility was broken by an urgent sound that stirred something deep within him, compelling him to step outside into the biting cold, a prelude to an encounter that would test his spirit and reshape his understanding of connection. The soothing stillness of the night was abruptly shattered by a series of low, desperate sounds. At first, Jack dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, but as he settled back into his chair, the noises grew louder and more distinct, whimpers interspersed with soft growls. Curiosity flickered in his mind, quickly entwined with a rising sense of concern. The forest was typically alive with nocturnal creatures, but these sounds were different. They carried an urgency that commanded his attention. Jack leaned closer to the cabin door, straining to discern the source of the disturbance. The familiar creaks of the wooden structure mixed with the unsettling sounds outside, each sharp intake of breath echoing in his ears. He felt an instinctual pull, urging him to venture out into the cold darkness that enveloped his home like a heavy blanket. With determination, he wrapped himself in a thick coat and stepped outside, the biting air immediately greeting him. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery light over the frozen landscape. Jack's breath formed clouds in front of him as he scanned the surroundings. The snow crunched beneath his boots, a reminder of the solitude that often comforted him now filled with apprehension. As he moved cautiously toward the sound, twigs snapped underfoot, accentuating the tension in the air. Every rustle made him acutely aware of his vulnerability, yet he pressed on, compelled by an unshakable sense of duty. Something was not right, and he needed to help whatever was out there. As he neared the edge of the clearing, the shadows began to take form, and the realization struck him hard. Whatever was lurking beyond held both danger and a plea for aid. As Jack approached the edge of the clearing, the silhouette of a large figure emerged from the shadows. His heart raced as he recognized it, a bear, dragging itself through the snow with great effort. The creature's fur was matted and stained, and its movements were slow and labored, each inch forward seemingly a monumental struggle. Jack could see the glint of moonlight reflecting off its weary eyes, which held a mixture of fear and desperation. The bear's breathing was heavy, and low whines escaped its lips, echoing the cries that had drawn him from his cabin. It paused momentarily, looking up at Jack with an expression that seemed to plead for help. Jack's instincts kicked in. He felt a wave of compassion wash over him as he realized this was no ordinary encounter. This mother bear had fought against the odds to reach him, driven by an instinct to seek safety for herself and her young. Glimpses of movement caught his eye just behind her, small shapes shifting in the snow. With a sinking feeling, he understood that she wasn't alone. She had cubs hidden nearby, likely trapped in the same perilous situation that had brought her to his doorstep. The sight filled him with urgency. The bear's injured state was evident. She bore wounds on her flanks, and he could see her muscles trembling from exertion. Jack took a tentative step forward, his heart aching at the sight of such raw vulnerability. He knew he had to act quickly. This bear was not only fighting for her own survival but for her cubs as well. That moment marked a turning point, a call to compassion that would lead him into uncharted territory, where man and beast would find themselves intertwined in a fragile dance of trust. As Jack stood before the injured bear, a whirlwind of emotions cascaded through him. Fear gripped his heart. He was acutely aware of the potential danger that such a powerful creature represented, especially in her vulnerable state. There was an unpredictable edge to the situation. An injured animal could act out of instinct to protect herself and her young. Still, the overwhelming sense of compassion overshadowed his fear, igniting a fierce protectiveness within him. He felt a profound connection to this mother bear, recognizing in her struggle the universal fight for survival. The sight of her trembling body weighed heavily on him, and he couldn't help but picture her cubs, innocent lives clamoring for their mother's safety. Each whimper from the bear echoed deep in his soul, stirring an instinctual urge to help. Jack's heart ached at the thought of these innocent creatures facing an uncertain fate in the unforgiving wilderness. Despite the chill seeping through his clothes, warmth spread through him as he considered what he might do. He wanted to shield her from further harm, to offer comfort and assistance in any way he could. This was not just about rescuing a bear. It was about responding to a call for help that transcended species. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like an unspoken promise to ensure that both mother and cubs had a fighting chance. With each passing moment, Jack felt his resolve solidifying. He knew that he could not turn away. Something deep within urged him forward into this precarious situation, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, driven by compassion and an unyielding desire to protect these vulnerable beings. As Jack focused on the injured bear, his attention was suddenly captured by faint, plaintive cries echoing from the shadows. His heart began to race as he strained to listen, realizing that the sounds weren't just figments of his imagination. They were soft whimpers, full of need and desperation. The realization hit him hard. She wasn't alone. With purpose, he carefully approached the bear, his gaze sweeping across the snowy expanse in search of the source. Moments later, a flicker of movement caught his eye, and he spotted two small shapes huddled together beneath a cluster of low-hanging branches. Instinctively crouching down to get a better look, he saw them. Two tiny bear cubs, their fur fluffed up against the cold but now shivering from fear. They peered out at him with wide, innocent eyes, their cries growing stronger as they sensed their mother's proximity. The sight of them sent a rush of urgency coursing through Jack. These helpless cubs needed immediate protection. They were not only vulnerable but now directly tied to his decision to help their mother. He could see that the mother bear's injuries were even more serious than he initially perceived, her strength waning as she fought to reach her young. Jack felt an overwhelming urge to comfort both the mother and her cubs, knowing that he needed to act swiftly. With newfound determination, he took a cautious step toward the cubs, intent on easing their fears. He spoke softly, hoping to convey reassurance in his presence while formulating an immediate plan to provide shelter and aid for this fragile family stranded in the freezing wilderness. Each whimper from the cubs fueled his resolve. He would not let them face this peril alone. With her weary body barely able to support her, the mother bear emitted soft, pleading whines that sliced through the frigid air, each sound resonating with a potent mix of desperation and maternal instinct. As Jack watched her struggle, he could see how deeply intertwined her fight was with the need to protect her cubs. Despite her own injuries, she stubbornly dragged herself closer to them, reaching out with her muzzle as though trying to reassure them from afar. In this moment, the bear's behavior became a profound expression of her plea for help. Each gentle nuzzle toward the cubs was a silent declaration of her love and determination to nurture, even in dire conditions. Her eyes danced between Jack and her offspring, conveying an urgent message. I am hurt, but I need you to help them. Jack felt the weight of her gaze. It was laced with fear for their safety and an instinctual understanding that she must find assistance if they were all to survive. As she paused briefly between painful steps, glancing at Jack with a mix of trust and trepidation, he realized how vulnerable she truly was. The bear's panting breaths echoed in the stillness, a reflection not just of physical exhaustion, but of a fierce will to endure for the sake of her young. In that shared moment, Jack felt an incredible bond forming, a recognition of shared struggle across species. Understanding the urgency of her plight filled him with resolve. This wounded mother was appealing for aid, not just for herself, but for two innocent lives relying on her strength. Jack knew he had to respond. The time for action had come. Driven by compassion and respect for her nurturing spirit, he stepped forward with renewed determination to provide the help that both she and her cubs so desperately needed. As Jack stood before the injured bear and her trembling cubs, a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts swirled in his mind. The urgency of their plight was clear, yet the potential dangers loomed large. He was acutely aware that approaching a wounded bear could provoke an unexpected reaction, even as she seemed to convey her need for help. Could he risk his safety for the sake of these vulnerable creatures? His instincts as a survivalist warned him of the inherent risks involved. Bears are unpredictable, particularly when protecting their young. What if she perceived him as a threat? Jack's heart raced at the thought. He had spent years in isolation learning to respect the wilderness and its inhabitants, and now he faced a delicate balance between caution and compassion. Yet, looking into the mother bear's eyes revealed something deeper, a plea that stirred his very core. It was a call for assistance that transcended species, igniting within him an overwhelming desire to protect. Images of her cubs huddling together, innocent and frightened, fueled his resolve further. He could not abandon them in their time of need. They were fighting not just for survival but for each other. Taking a deep breath, Jack weighed his options carefully. He could retreat into the safety of his cabin, allowing nature to take its course, or he could step forward into the unknown, risking everything to provide aid and comfort. The thought of walking away gnawed at him. It felt wrong to leave them without support. In that pivotal moment, Jack chose courage over fear. He decided to approach with care and kindness, determined to do whatever it took to help this family in desperate need. His heart told him that this encounter had been orchestrated by fate itself, their lives intertwined in a way that would demand his compassion and action. Driven by urgency, Jack hurried back to his cabin, heart pounding with determination. He knew time was of the essence, and he needed to gather supplies that would assist both the injured bear and her cubs. The first task was to find something to stabilize the mother bear's injuries. He quickly rummaged through his meager supplies, pulling together a thick blanket to provide warmth and comfort, along with some old bandages that had been tucked away in a corner. Next, he prepared a few containers filled with food scraps, leftovers from his own meals, that could provide nourishment for the weary bears. He had always kept extra provisions during winter, knowing nature's harshness could lead to unexpected encounters. As he worked, thoughts raced through his mind about how best to approach the bears without alarming them further. He recalled lessons learned from his years in the wilderness. It was crucial to move slowly and speak softly. Drawing in a steadying breath, Jack grabbed a flashlight, knowing its beam would help illuminate his path in the darkness as he navigated back to the clearing where he'd left them. Before stepping outside again, he paused for a moment, mentally preparing himself for what lay ahead. Would the mother bear trust him? Would she allow him to come close enough to help? Those questions lingered as he stepped outside into the biting cold once more. Armed with supplies and a plan, he made his way cautiously back to the distressed family. The sight of their fragile forms waiting for him spurred him on. In that moment, Jack transformed from a solitary man into a guardian. He felt an overwhelming responsibility settle on his shoulders as he approached, ready to do everything in his power to aid these vulnerable beings. With supplies in hand, Jack returned to the clearing where the mother bear and her cubs waited, a mixture of trepidation and determination swelling within him. He knelt down to place the blanket on the ground, creating a soft spot for the injured bear to rest. Looking closely at her injuries, he noticed several deep gashes along her side, signs of a previous encounter that had left her in pain. Each breath she took seemed to be one of effort, a physical manifestation of her will to stay strong for her cubs. Jack spoke gently as he assessed her condition, hoping his calm presence would reassure her. "I'm here to help," he murmured, understanding that she might not fully grasp his intentions but sensing that his voice was a comforting sound against the harshness of their surroundings. The bear shifted slightly, her weary eyes flickering toward him, reflecting a mix of vulnerability and growing trust. Carefully, he began applying the bandages to her wounds, wincing as he saw how raw and sensitive the areas were. He worked with painstaking care, cradling each bandage in a way that minimized discomfort. With every tender motion, Jack felt a connection building, a silent understanding between them as they shared this moment of respite amid their struggles. Once he had tended to her injuries, Jack laid out some food scraps nearby, hoping the enticing scent would break through the fear and wariness that enveloped them. As she moved cautiously toward the food, he observed her instinctive nurturing behavior. She glanced back at her cubs before eating, ensuring they were safe before indulging herself. Watching this act of love ignited something profound within Jack's heart. He realized that they were now bound together in this fight for survival, a solitary man caring for a wounded mother bear and her innocent offspring, each forging an unspoken pact of trust in the depths of the unforgiving wilderness. With the mother bear resting and beginning to recuperate, Jack turned his attention to the cubs, who were still huddled in the snow, their small bodies trembling from the cold. He knelt down to their level, speaking softly to reassure them as he reached out a gentle hand. The cubs blinked up at him with wide, innocent eyes, their whimpers softening as they sensed his calm demeanor. Jack carefully gathered them into his arms, feeling their warmth against him as he sheltered them from the biting winds. He placed them on the thick blanket he had laid out earlier, wrapping it around them like a protective cocoon to keep them warm. The small creatures nestled closer together, instinctively seeking comfort in each other's presence. Next, he dug into his supplies for food, offering small portions of scraps he had prepared for their mother. Jack presented the morsels to the cubs, watching with delight as they sniffed curiously before tentatively taking bites. Their initial hesitation quickly faded as they devoured the food eagerly, their awkward paws clumsily digging into the snow as they searched for more. While they ate, Jack kept a watchful eye on their mother. He noted her breathing gradually becoming steadier, her eyes softer as she began to trust him. Every glance she cast toward her cubs reassured him that she was not just a feral animal but a loving mother desperate to protect them. As Jack sat quietly nearby, a sense of fulfillment washed over him. He felt an inexplicable bond forming between them, a connection woven through mutual need and compassion. In that cold wilderness clearing, surrounded by fragile lives relying on each other for survival, he realized that he was no longer just a solitary man. He had become a caretaker in this unexpected family unit. As days passed, the bond between Jack and the mother bear deepened, with subtle signs of trust emerging in their interactions. Each time Jack approached to check on her, he noticed her initial wariness diminishing. Rather than retreating, she began to watch him with a calm curiosity, her body language shifting from defensive to relaxed. The deep furrows of concern around her eyes softened, reflecting an understanding that he posed no threat to herself or her cubs. One afternoon, as Jack sat quietly nearby, the bear slowly ambled closer to him, her movements deliberate yet gentle. She sniffed the air cautiously, and when she was within reach, she lowered her head slightly, a gesture that felt almost like an offering of trust. Jack, moved by this unexpected display, held out his hand slowly, allowing her to inspect him at her own pace. The moment felt sacred. He could sense the gratitude radiating from her as she acknowledged his efforts to care for her family. In return for his kindness, the bear occasionally brought small gifts of her own, a few berries she had foraged or a bit of soft moss, leavings that seemed to symbolize her tentative acceptance of Jack's role as protector. She would also nuzzle her cubs toward him, encouraging them to draw comfort from his presence, a silent testament to the trust growing between them. Jack felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment in these interactions. The once wounded bear was now a symbol of resilience and survival, and their relationship blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect. Together in the harsh wilderness, they forged an unspoken pact that transcended species, a commitment to support and nurture one another in the face of uncertainty. In this shared journey of healing and recovery, Jack realized that he was part of something far greater than himself. He was woven into the fabric of life itself. Word of Jack's compassionate efforts to care for the injured bear and her cubs soon spread through the small community of residents living on the outskirts of the wilderness. As curiosity drew them toward his cabin, a mixed array of reactions emerged among the neighbors. Some arrived with genuine concern, eager to understand the situation and offer assistance, while others expressed skepticism, questioning whether a man should intervene in the natural order of things. The first to approach was Mara, a local wildlife enthusiast, who admired Jack's dedication and recognized the mother bear's extraordinary resilience. "This is a chance to show humanity at its best," she exclaimed, encouraging others to support Jack's efforts. Her enthusiasm inspired a few more neighbors to rally behind him, bringing additional supplies and resources. However, not everyone viewed the situation as positively. Henry, a longtime hunter in the area, voiced his doubts. "Bears are dangerous creatures," he warned the group. What happens when she recovers? Will she pose a threat to us or our livestock? His pragmatic concerns resonated with some, creating a tense atmosphere among the gathering crowd. Despite this skepticism, Jack remained focused on his mission. He appreciated the support from those who believed in his cause while accepting that not everyone would understand. As he continued to care for the bear family, he silently hoped that time would reveal his intentions to all. Gradually, as more residents witnessed the improving conditions of the bear and her cubs, skepticism began to fade. The communal effort not only provided practical help but also sparked discussions about wildlife conservation and human interaction with nature. In this small community nestled amid vast wilderness, Jack found himself at the center of a transformative experience that extended beyond mere survival. It was shaping a collective understanding of compassion and coexistence within their shared environment. As days turned into weeks, Jack encountered a series of challenges that tested his resolve and instincts. Despite his efforts, supplies began to dwindle. The food he had gathered for the bears was running low, forcing him to ration it carefully. Each morning, he made the difficult decision of how much to provide, knowing that the mother bear needed nourishment to regain her strength while also ensuring her cubs were adequately fed. The winter's brutal grip brought uncertainty, as hunting for additional provisions during such harsh weather became increasingly difficult. One evening, as Jack ventured further from the cabin in search of food scraps, he spotted signs of other wildlife in the area, tracks indicating the presence of larger predators. The thought of a hungry wolf pack or even another bear posed a potential threat not only to his safety but also to the vulnerable family he was caring for. He felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him, vowing to keep them safe at all costs. In addition to these external threats, Jack grappled with moments of doubt and fatigue. The endless cycle of worry about dwindling resources and lurking dangers weighed heavily on his spirit. Yet, each time he returned to check on the mother bear and her cubs, he was met with their trusting eyes, a reminder of why he had chosen this path. These challenges sharpened his senses and deepened his connection with the bears. He learned to adapt quickly, using natural elements from the forest around him to fortify their shelter, maintaining warmth through improvised means. Each obstacle faced became not just a test of endurance but an opportunity for growth, solidifying Jack's commitment to protect and nurture this newfound family against all odds in the unforgiving wilderness. As the days passed, both Jack and the mother bear confronted their fears in unexpected ways. For Jack, the daunting challenges of caring for the bear family intensified his anxiety. Each threatening growl from the wild or rustle in the underbrush reminded him of his vulnerability. He was only a man alone amid nature's fierce realities. Yet, with each passing moment spent with the bears, Jack learned to channel that fear into a fierce protectiveness. He found strength in vulnerability, pushing through fatigue and uncertainty to reassure them. For the mother bear, her journey from fear to acceptance mirrored Jack's own path. Initially wary of this human who offered assistance, she slowly began to lower her defenses as she regained strength. Each time she glanced at Jack while munching on food scraps or observing him tending to her cubs, there was a subtle shift. Her body language became less tense and more inviting. The moments they shared were fraught with unspoken understanding. Both had faced suffering and danger, yet here they were, embarking on an unusual alliance. One evening, as snow gently fell around them, Jack crouched beside her and offered soft words of reassurance, a gesture he hoped would further bridge their divide. To his astonishment, she leaned closer, allowing him to stroke her fur gently while her cubs played nearby. The act marked a breakthrough. It was an acknowledgement of trust that left both man and beast humbled. In confronting their fears together, Jack discovered a deeper sense of purpose beyond mere survival. He was part of an extraordinary bond that enhanced their resilience. This shared vulnerability cultivated an evolving relationship where compassion triumphed over fear, enabling growth for both man and bear amidst the frostbitten wilderness they now called home. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Jack, the mother bear, and her cubs continued to grow in unique ways, defying nature's norms. Jack often found himself sitting quietly nearby as the bear tended to her cubs, observing their interactions with awe. The energetic little ones would frolic around him, instinctively curtailing their natural wariness as they became accustomed to his presence. Their playful antics brought laughter to Jack's heart, transforming what began as a solemn endeavor into moments of joyful connection. One chilly morning, as snowflakes gently fell from the sky like delicate feathers, Jack decided to take a small step toward deepening their bond. He brought out a bundle of berries he had foraged, laying them on a smooth rock near the clearing. The mother bear watched closely, her curiosity piqued as Jack gestured to the treats with a smile. To his delight, she nudged her cubs forward, encouraging them to investigate. As they sniffed around the offering and eagerly took their first bites, their delighted squeals filled the air. In these nurturing moments, Jack witnessed the enduring maternal instincts of the mother bear. She would watch him with cautious eyes, but with an unmistakable sense of gratitude as she saw her cubs thrive under his care. Every shared meal and tender interaction knitted their lives together more tightly, transcending the boundaries between species. Jack found immense fulfillment in each exchange, knowing that he was not just providing for them, but becoming a part of their family dynamic. This unorthodox relationship allowed all three bears to thrive and taught Jack profound lessons about love and compassion. From a once solitary existence, he discovered his purpose intertwined with theirs, creating an extraordinary connection that deepened the fabric of their lives against a backdrop of raw wilderness. As weeks turned into a steady rhythm of care and nurturing, the recovery journey of the mother bear and her cubs became evident. Jack meticulously observed their progress, noting how the mother's wounds began to heal and her energy gradually returned. The once wounded bear now moved with more confidence, her protective instincts sharpening as she resumed her role as the guardian of her cubs. Each day brought subtle improvements, and Jack took pride in knowing his efforts contributed to their recovery. The cubs, too, displayed remarkable growth. Their playful antics became bolder as they explored their surroundings, their initial hesitation replaced by curiosity and confidence. Jack found joy in watching them chase each other through the snow, tumbling and wrestling in a dance of innocence. He would often join in on their games, tossing small bits of food or creating makeshift toys from branches, fostering a playful environment that nurtured not only their physical health but also their emotional well-being. Through these shared moments, the bond between Jack and the bear family solidified. The mother bear would often sit nearby while Jack interacted with her cubs, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and approval. It became clear to Jack that she understood his intentions. He was not merely a caretaker but part of a family unit striving to survive together. As the season transitioned towards spring, the warmth of the sun brought new life to the wilderness. Flowers began to bloom, and the sounds of nature grew louder around them. In this vibrant setting, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The challenges they had faced together had transformed into lessons of resilience and trust, forging a unique relationship that transcended natural boundaries. They were no longer just man and bear. They were companions bound by a shared journey of healing and survival in an unforgiving world. As the mother bear and her cubs continued to thrive under Jack's care, the time approached for their eventual release back into the wild. Jack felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. He had grown deeply attached to them, and the thought of letting them go weighed heavily on his heart. He understood that their survival depended on reinstating them in their natural habitat, yet he couldn't shake the fear of the unknown. In preparation for their return, Jack began to observe their behavior more closely, assessing how well they had regained their instincts. He watched as the mother bear explored their surroundings with renewed confidence, teaching her cubs how to forage for food and navigate through the forest. Each successful attempt filled Jack with pride, affirming that they were ready for the wild. Yet, he could not help but feel a pang of loss at the prospect of saying goodbye. To ease the transition, Jack devised a plan. He set up a makeshift enclosure near his cabin where they could acclimate to being outside without immediate dangers. It was a place with ample food sources and shelter, allowing them to gradually adjust before venturing further into the wilderness. He spent extra time with them during this period, fostering their confidence while reinforcing the bond they had built over these months. As spring blossomed around them, bringing warmth and fresh life to the forest, Jack felt hopeful. Each day passed with moments of joy, the three of them frolicking together under the sun, yet also a quiet understanding that it was time for the bear family to reclaim their lives. In his heart, Jack committed to honoring their journey by ensuring they were well prepared for life beyond his care, knowing that true love sometimes meant letting go. The day of release arrived, and Jack felt a heavy mix of emotions as he prepared to say goodbye to the mother bear and her cubs. Standing at the entrance of the transitional enclosure, he watched them play, their energy vibrant and full of life, a testament to their recovery. The sun shone brightly overhead, illuminating the forest around them, a perfect backdrop for this bittersweet farewell. Jack took a moment to breathe deeply, allowing himself to cherish the memories they had shared. He recalled the first time he had seen the mother bear struggle in the snow, and how far they had come together since that fateful night. Now, as she nuzzled her cubs and encouraged them to explore their surroundings, he felt a profound sense of pride for what they had achieved as a family. As he opened the gate to the enclosure, Jack spoke softly to them. "You're ready," he murmured, hoping his words conveyed all the love and care he had for them. The mother bear paused, looking back at him with eyes that seemed to reflect understanding. She stepped forward cautiously, leading her cubs into the wild expanse that awaited them. With each tentative step they took away from him, Jack's heart ached with sorrow but also filled with hope. He watched as they ventured deeper into the forest, instinctively navigating their way through the trees and underbrush. The sight of them reclaiming their natural habitat brought tears to his eyes. In that moment, Jack realized that this was not just an end, but a beginning, a chance for the bear family to thrive in the wilderness where they belonged. As he turned back toward his cabin, he felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had played a crucial role in their journey, and now it was time for him to embrace his own path forward, knowing that love sometimes meant letting go. As Jack stood alone outside his cabin, watching the mother bear and her cubs disappear into the vast wilderness, a wave of reflection washed over him. This experience had transformed him in ways he could not have anticipated. The bond forged through their shared struggles had revealed profound insights into the interconnectedness of all living beings and the resilience of nature. He thought about the instinctual connection that had developed between them, a relationship that transcended species boundaries. Jack had entered this journey as a solitary man focused on survival, but he emerged as a caretaker who learned to see the world through the eyes of these magnificent creatures. The lessons he gained extended beyond simple acts of kindness. They taught him about empathy, trust, and the importance of supporting one another in times of vulnerability. Jack felt a deep respect for nature's resilience, understanding that it possesses an innate ability to heal and adapt. He marveled at how quickly the bear family had recovered, driven by their maternal instincts and love for each other. It was a reminder that life persists against all odds when nurtured in a supportive environment. As he walked back to his cabin, Jack reflected on how their time together had enriched his own life. He realized that this journey was not merely about saving a bear family. It was also about rediscovering his place within the natural world. With every step he took, he carried a piece of their story with him, one of compassion, coexistence, and the enduring power of love. No longer just a solitary figure in isolation, Jack embraced his role as part of a larger tapestry of life, forever changed by this extraordinary connection with the wild.